Hello comic fans, here's Earl Grey. Today I want to talk about Absolute Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, Volume 1. Here are my German trades, my old German trades from the Carlsen Verlag. Some issues were, I guess, never published in German, so I'm a bit extra excited for this new publication here. But all the comic community all over the world eagerly awaited this Volume 1, and I can say for sure on the first and the second glance this is a beautiful book, maybe not so on the third, and that's where this glue comes in, but more about that later. Yeah, the beautiful slipcase here, as you can see. The typical Absolute edition size, and let's put this out of the slipcase, and we have this nice portrait of Swamp Thing. I mean, it's a bit unjust to say this is Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, because it's Stephen Bissette's and John Totlebens and Rick Veitch's and so on Swamp Thing as well, of course, and without the art we wouldn't remember the story here, and it wouldn't be granted an absolute edition, of course. But Alan Moore managed to write a very plausible, touching love story, and that's what Volume 1 is all about, a love story between Swamp Thing and Abigail Arcane. You can read the story here, a completed story, more or less concluded story in one book, and you don't have to get the volumes afterwards, but yeah, why won't you? But more or less suddenly the whole comic community, or a majority of them, got full grater on the makers of this book, especially on Steve Olive, who recolored the book here. How dare you? How can you dare to recolor that old book? And you know me, I'm all about defending old coloring versus new coloring, and I'm pretty conservative in many ways. But let me tell you, I liked this recoloring, not on each and every page, on each and every panel, but I think it looks splendidly most of the time. And let me show you some examples. Well, years ago when I read Swamp Thing, my old German trades here, I was impressed, of course, by Alan Moore's writing. And I was impressed by the art and even the colors, but I wasn't blown away, because the colors were pretty standard, in my opinion. And yeah, nothing too special, I would say. But if you see the new coloring, and of course it's a really total new coloring, there's nothing shy about it, and nothing modest. Where before there was green, there's now violet, and so on and so on. You can see it here. That's the old coloring. That's the new coloring. And of course you can discuss these gradients and the faces. They're not always on point, in my opinion, and I'm a great advocate of flat colors usually, but it didn't disturb me here with this comic. And maybe here a very extreme example what the new coloring by Steve Olive did here. On the bottom line, Swamp Thing is a pulp story. It tries to get our attention by all means, and it's a story about a plant creature, and of course it has some silly basics right there, and even Alan Moore managed to create some kind of classic out of it. there are still these pulpy elements that want to get our attention. And in many ways, I think this new coloring put the pulp back into the story in a very good way. It grabs our attention. It is spectacular. It is mind-blowing. And of course, if you think it should be classic, more flat in a way, then you have to grab one of these old collections, and it's not a problem to get these. So we don't have... Steve Olive hadn't committed a sacrilege. Well, this is not one of these spectacular new versions, but you can see it's all a bit more detailed. The coloring definitely tries to put some new layer on the old art. Here's another double page. This is the old version, and this is the new version. And yeah, sorry to have to break it to you, but I like the new version much, much better. And actually, I would ponder if we put it the other way around, and if this would have been the old version and that's the new version, everyone would go full greater on the new version. I'm pretty sure about it, and say, how dare you to change these beautiful colors into this one. And here's another comparison of the old coloring on the left and the new coloring on the right, to get my point across that there's really nothing modest about the new coloring, but I really like it. When this coloring tries something new, tries to grab our attention, screams at us, look at me, I'm a horror novel, I'm something spectacular. And we know this kind of unmodest art from covers from pulp novels, and I like this kind of stuff, and really. And sometimes it even serves the story. Here's a very good example when Swampy is lightened up by the headlights of a police car. The policemen obviously don't recognize Swampy in the dark, but they could. And that's the interesting thing here in these 4 panels. And Swampy trots off into the darkness. And somehow the old coloring didn't got that right. I mean, it's a bit there just because of John Totleben's black inks, but otherwise the coloring doesn't do anything to exaggerate this moment here. So, and I could show you a lot of other pages, and maybe here even on the next page you will have a lot of stuff to see, and very colorful, bright stuff. And on the bottom line, it's not a new comic, but it has really new clothes, and it suits this story well. Reading this book here at hand was a very nice experience. The binding held up, and it's soon binding, of course. I mean, we have an absolute edition, and we have this ribbon here, and everything is fine. But then I came almost to the end of it, and guess what happened? Here you can see it. Well, I haven't this for quite a time here. And as you know it, this is the beginning of the end. If you would see the first book with this kind of gap between the pages and the binding here, you would say, hey, Earl Grey, calm down, this is nothing too dramatic. But it's the first step of a book falling apart. And this is a new book. Damn you. And of course, I tried to glue these pages here and put some white glue in these spaces here with a brush. And I was really careful and put this book here So I pressed it between other books, and so that the paper block could press here this part together with his weight on it. And I waited 24 hours, and then I opened the book, and as you see, the gap reappeared again. So I'm pretty confused. What can I do right now before this book here really starts apart? I mean, I can live with some gap there, but when the paper, the pages loosen up, like in other absolute editions from DC that I had before, then it's really a problem. So maybe you can help me and put your comments down below. What should I do? But anyhow, thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.